Welcome to the morning meeting. Another week. Sean, Tim, and I will preview the day for you. Take your questions. If you want to get in the conversation, please raise your electronic hand. Always love new voices as well as old favorites. We're going to talk about what Donald Trump did this weekend, the exact opposite of what many people in the party wanted him to do, which is start to focus. We're going to talk about his made-up AI allegation. And we're going to talk about his Elon Musk interview. And then Sean wants to talk about some things that he thinks are going well for his side. So we'll talk about those too. Again, please raise your hand. This is a place for civil extended conversations like no other, whether you're in the chat on YouTube, in the chat here on the two-way platform, or if you're called on to speak, please remember we're here to learn and educate, peace, love, and understanding rather than fighting. So please adhere to our ethos. Kamala Harris, after her battleground state tour, is in Washington today, briefings with the staff privately. She's recording a video for AFSCME for their convention. I'm not sure if we'll see that today or not, but in theory, we're not seeing that. And her week ahead schedule so far just has a Thursday event in Maryland with President Biden, her first public event with him since the change, I believe. And I suspect events will be added, but we will see. Donald Trump, as far as we know, doing nothing today until 8 Eastern time, when he does what all candidates looking to change the page do. He's doing a Twitter Spaces with Elon Musk. We'll talk about what could come out of that. President Biden coming back and on the way back, I think, from Rehoboth this morning and not doing anything public. White House briefing at 2. J.D. Vance, nothing scheduled that I know of. Tim Walz, nothing scheduled, although he's got a lot of fundraisers from coast to coast scheduled for the rest of the week. And that Musk thing again at 8 o'clock. So, guys, Tim, I know you know all about the fake AI thing. Sean cloistered himself away from it. You can see his post there, President Trump's post up there. He basically got in his head that there was this fakery going on and that Kamala Harris did not draw a big crowd in Detroit, that it was AI generated. There's so many things that are messed up about that, and the fact that he can still get access to his social media accounts and post something so outlandish at a time when he spent the weekend with donors out west, many of whom were very upset by his lack of focus on crime, immigration, the economy, inflation, and America's role in the world, and focused on polling and crowd size. This takes his obsession with crowd size to a new low of madness. And lots of people looked at that and said, you know, Trump always has succeeded doing outlandish things, unexpected things. Sean, this is a horse of a different color, and I'm wondering how you think it could possibly be that such a post could occur, so easily disproved, so baseless, and such a source of mockery from me, Stephen King, and many, many others. How could that happen?
I'd just like to start this week by complimenting both you and Tim on your attire. I was about to go Friday casual. Here you are with the Brooks Brothers collection. Tim looking like a Republican with the red tie. Thank God I at least put on a collared shirt. So that's all I have to say.
Yeah. All right. How could this
happen?
I will say,
look, I'm not. I don't think this is helpful. I think that goes without saying. What I will say, though, interestingly, and just to give people a preview, when I got on with Mark, I said I actually was confused by the post this weekend, in all seriousness, because I'm wondering how many other people were. Meaning, I was like, this is an easily discernible thing. Either people were at the this is like the moon landing. Either it happened or it didn't.
It didn't. There was a huge crowd there, and there were huge crowds every city she went to. I have to clarify how insane this was. Even if somehow he proved something he couldn't prove, that the crowd in Michigan was fake, how about the crowds in every other city?
Well, I mean, I think the bottom line, though, is that clearly there's somebody around him, because it's one thing to dispute the size. It's another thing to dispute the existence, which is what the plane picture did. And that is troubling in the sense that there is somebody close enough to him that is trying to claim that there's this AI generated issue happening that, you know, again, as I said to you prior to the call, I mean, all it takes is one person saying, hey, I was there, here's my photo. And so as has been the case since the jump, I think that the more that this is a focus on policy and issues, talking about her flip-flopping, the better. And the one saving grace, I was looking at my calendar over the weekend, you know, for the last 2 months of the 2016 campaign, I think there was there was a level of discipline and focus that we need to get back right now. And so we still have some time. We get through the DNC, and then hopefully that reverts.
I
Yeah.
I want
I
Tim. I
just,
want Tim to Tim before you take your
yeah.
victory lap, Sean. I just need to ask you again. He's a former president. He supposedly has this vaunted team that's more organized and focused than the previous teams. How could he be allowed to go on Truth Social and post such a thing, opening him up not just to mockery from the left, but deep concern from his own supporters and his own donors, saying this is too unhinged at a time when he needs to be showing just the opposite. How could it happen?
So there's two questions you're asking. One is the how can it happen? It's Trump. He's not asking for permission from anybody. There's no one that's his gatekeeper. I mean, that's what makes him him, right? So the idea, I mean, you saw it in the White House, he still had Twitter. There's no, I mean, this is not you're never going to take, once you take him away from being him, you're going to have a base problem. So that there's the issue of how does he have access? Well, he's always going to have access. That's him. It's how does he take phone calls? How does he post? And the second thing is who's giving him this information. I think that's the more important thing. The idea that somebody is trying to convince him that there's AI generated events occurring is more concerning to me than he still has access.
Tim,
Yeah,
please take your victory lap.
I mean, honestly, there's not even much for me to say on this to like dunk on it. It is just kind of amazing. And I will say, I worried in 2016 and I worried in 2020 that we would lose novel ways to communicate to people that this person is unhinged, that this is the type of person you would not want to have the nuclear codes, that this is the type of person who brings total chaos everywhere he goes and is seemingly unwell. And this is just another thread in that tapestry. It's amazing that he's found ways. I mean, this may actually be the best use of AI thus far, is just Trump commenting on it as a fake thing to further that narrative. So, yeah.
Tim, I think a lot of people on this call already know this, but just describe the level of confidence that the Democrats already have about the race, and how and why this helps that even more.
Yeah. I mean, I think Democrats have confidence about this race, but I would also say that like we have been in a place similar to this before where we see the polls trajectory changing and the Democratic candidate is doing extremely well, and we lost that race. So, it's always tempered confidence, that coupled with the fact that we are Democrats and always worried about everything and anxious. So, but we feel good, right, with the polling that has come out recently, particularly the New York Times Siena polls. And the reason that this furthers that narrative is it is the same old Trump, and we've beat the same old Trump before. Now, to that same point, we've also lost to this Trump. But I think the message in particular that people are ready to turn the page and be done with this and stop thinking about this and stop having a guy tweeting about crowd sizes is important. And I think that's a message that the Harris campaign is also hammering, and this plays directly into that.
Look, I would just say the one last thing is that I've said this before. Trump has a great message. Tim brings up the word chaos. I know that we've discussed this before. I think Alex Castellanos has mentioned this. There is a great contrast with Trump's chaos, right? He had a world that was more stable, a country that was more prosperous and safer, and he should play to that. And instead of letting that narrative get away, because he's got a better and stronger record when it comes to his 4 years. The bottom line is that we didn't have the chaos around the world in multiple spots that we did when Trump was there. People were worried, people were concerned. And I think he can seize on that narrative again.
So one of my pet peeves is people say this is a base election, or this is a turnout election, or this is a undecided voter election. Every election is everything. You have to turn out your base and you have to appeal to undecided voters. It's never all or nothing. Trump tonight is doing this Elon Musk thing at 8:00. It's really the marquee event of the day because Harris isn't doing anything, and there's not a lot of activity. So, Sean, is this a pure base event? Is that the reason to do this? What's the headline? If there's a way to appeal in this event to swing voters, what's the headline that could come out of it that would be good for Trump?
If I knew the headline that was going to come out of this, I'd be down the street at the Cumberland Farms. My power.
No, but I'm saying what's good. If you were saying to Trump,
well, again, I mean, I just said it. I think if he can come in and explain and focus on issues that she was, that she's for fracking, she wants to take away private health insurance. She did all the stuff that she said in 2020 and just hammer the issues. Boom, boom, boom. And
but it's doing it with Musk on audio only. Is that a good use of his time with Musk?
Well, look,
Like,
the bottom line is we're talking about it and everybody will talk about it. When Trump does an event, it doesn't matter if he does it with a doorknob. The bottom line is the world will pay attention. And so, you know, where he's doing something and with whom is really incidental to what he says. And if he comes out today and maybe the audio version is better because he can have 8 people around him saying, "Hey, hammer on this, write this, read this." I don't know, but I think it's a much better venue when you're on camera and every move is depicted. If you can literally sit and read a piece of paper that people are handing you and saying, "Hey, bring this up or hammer this," that might be better for him. But the bottom line is we'll be talking about it tomorrow morning. And so for that reason, I think you're going to see a lot of the narrative about what he says driven tonight. Now, it works both ways. We could be saying, "I can't believe he brought this up," but we could also be saying, "Wow, he put them on defense because of this."
Yeah, I just one point there that I think I would take contention with is it does matter who he's talking to. I think Trump is someone
yeah,
who sits with the interviewer and sort of like absorbs what they're saying. If they say something conspiratorial, he'll be like, "Well, I've never heard that. That's very interesting." And Elon Musk is a dangerous trap for him in that sense. I mean, I haven't gone back and looked, but I bet if I looked at the last 10 posts that Elon made on Twitter about politics, like 8 of them are incendiary. And then there's like some SpaceX mixed in there. So,
right.
it also makes me think a
But
little bit of like DeSantis's launch. Like, it's a separate conversation, but that was a
yeah,
disaster.
but
So I
not
think it's going
just
to be risky.
not just incendiary, but he's going to ask them probably about crypto and about like all sorts of niche stuff that I'm sure helps with parts of the base. But this is a time when people are looking to him to speak more broadly. And as you said, John, to focus on issues that have 70-30 appeal to everybody on his side as opposed to niche stuff. So we'll see. Maybe it'll be awesome. All right. Sean wants to bring in other stuff, but he's going to have to do it in the context of adding folks in because we got to go to the phones, as we like to say. Lisa, thank you for joining. Tell everybody where you are, who you're supporting, and ask away.
All right. Good morning. I'm reaching out to you as a Harris supporter from Rhinebeck, New York, Dutchess County, New York. And I do have a question for all of you. There are 2 reasons primarily that I am firmly in the Harris camp. One of them, both of them have to do with agency, I would say. One of them is because, as an American, I am very concerned about my vote being honored. And when I think about January 6th and I think about fake electors, I can't possibly imagine voting for Trump. The other thing that with regard to agency has to do with reproductive rights. One of the things that I so appreciate about this platform is hearing the voices of those who hold other positions. And I hear concerns about the economy and concerns about the costs of everyday items that are essential to families. And I guess my question is, and Sean alluded to this when he spoke just a moment ago about the economy when Trump had his first presidency. To me, it was a different world. It was a pre-pandemic world. There are so many factors that have contributed to where we are now. And so I'm listening with such good faith to hear opinions about why folks feel so convinced that a Trump presidency would mean the cost of their milk and eggs will be more reasonable.
All right, Sean, convert her over. Lisa, get ready to become MAGA.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's going to happen. I would just say that look, what makes this election unique is that when, as an operative, when you're running, generally speaking, you're talking about promises and I will do the following, my policies will lead to this. I think Trump has the ability to point to his record. Now, you can dispute whether or not a particular policy did something, right? If there's a direct correlation between lowering this tax rate and this outcome. But the bottom line is, from a political standpoint, it's a much easier argument to say, look at my record. Here's where unemployment was. Here's where the stock market was. Here's where these other economic indicators were. And just a general feeling. When you look at polling, people felt better economically, more security during his 4 years. So it's an easier sell, right? That's what politics at its core is. It's getting people to buy into you. You're a product is at its core. And so if he can say, here's my track record, you were safer, you were more prosperous, You made more money. The economy was stronger. It's a gut visceral feeling. You either believe it or you don't, right? So I've always said that people can't convince you with a number. Here's what this was. Here's what this, like a la 1992. So my only point is that I think Trump has the ability, unlike a normal presidential election, instead of saying, here's what I promised to do for you, he can say, look what I did.
Lisa, what makes you think Trump has a chance to win the election? What has he got going for him?
Well, I was on maybe a week or so ago. We're in a deeply purple area, right, where we're living now, and it's conversations that we hear on two-way. It's conversations among neighbors, among my own family. I certainly.
But if the vice president called you and said, "What should I be on guard against?" What would you tell her to be on guard against?
Personally, I would be on guard against going down rabbit holes of personal attacks and, comments like the couch comment that Walls made. I think that was hopefully a one-off as far as I'm concerned. But just kind of, traveling down that rabbit hole of just attacking on things that are non-issue related.
Got it. Lisa, thank you. Please come back often. Guys, you want to say anything else about that, or are we going to go to Mark?
No, I think just by nature, what Lisa's describing explains to me also why she gravitates towards voting for Harris. I think that is fundamentally where the campaign is focused. I think there's also a lot to say on the economy. I think we're seeing like polling this morning from Axios, for example, that gap between who you trust on the economy is really, really closed. So,
Lisa, thank you. Please come back regularly. Marco, remind everybody where you are, who you're for, and go ahead.
Hello, I'm in Dallas, and I'm going to be voting for Harris, for the Harris ticket. I was thinking about a little bit on what Sean was talking about in the sense of Trump trying to move the narrative a bit. And I'm very concerned about the fact that Harris hasn't done interviews. At the same time, I'm also concerned that there is no way for me to show that concern. Like, what am I going to do? Like, vote for Trump? And I feel like that's where a lot of people are. Like,
what concern is it concerning you in terms of her abilities, her governing, her chances of winning the election? Why does it concern you?
I think that there's a very base thing about my reasoning for voting for Harris, which is there's a Democratic concern when it comes to January 6th. And that's a visceral thing. But at a lower level, not answering questions, not explaining why you changed your positions, like all of that builds into the apathy that can lead to a January 6th. Does that make sense? Like if you're out here, if you're refusing to answer questions, and I understand why she's doing it, and I understand that at this moment it's the right political tactic, or it could be. I just think that there's an opportunity for, take fracking, for example, right? I know she didn't pick Shapiro like I wanted to, no offense to him, but why not go to a natural gas fracking plant and say, I didn't expect her to know everything about energy production when she came out of California, right? She's a state attorney general, California senator. She probably watched an HBO documentary and thought that it poisoned water. So say you changed your mind and go like, listen, I was vice president for 4 years. I was in the Joe Biden administration, and not me, but you guys work your ass off. And now we're the largest energy producer in the world, and I'm going to keep that up. Like, why not? And get some surrogates on there, some people that actually know what they're talking about. And that's how you make that pivot. You actually you're out there. You don't just release a press statement.
Marco, thank you. That's awesome. Thank you very much. Tim, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't mean this as dismissive in any way, but I do think what the Harris campaign is doing regarding press is very smart, right? It's like the pressure that you have in a balloon. You can like let it go, it'll fly all over the room, or you can slowly release it as people are applying pressure to it. And that's what they've started to do. She did, a gag after one event. She did a gaggle after a second event. She said she's going to sit for an interview by the end of the month. She said she's going to roll out an economic policy. So they're very smart in what they're doing. And I think Marco's concern is fair. And I think we will see it happen. I think we will see interviews happen.
Look, I think Tim's right. Marco's strategy is basically what the Washington Post editorial said, and I see it in the chat. The bottom line is Marco encapsulated exactly their strategy, which is I'm for her. I have nowhere to go, but I'm frustrated, right? And they know that. To Marco's question, though, just to help him understand this, why they're not, because if she does exactly what he's advocating, which I get, I think is smart, right? Go explain why you changed your issue. She potentially could upset all the environmentalists, right? So right now, by saying nothing, really, you kind of are able to play both sides. And I get why they're doing it, to Tim's point. But I think Marco encapsulates where I think a lot of voters are, which is I don't like that she won't give me an answer, but I don't know where to go.
All right, we were being overrun with blue sentiment, so I brought in the Red Brigade here. 3 Republicans, 2 who have stood for elective office, 2, I believe, are supporting Donald Trump, and 1 who is not, or at least not saying. Pat McCrory, former governor of North Carolina, Ben Weber, former congressman from Minnesota, Alex Castellanos, two-way stalwart Republican strategist. So, guys, just have at it. Explain where you think the Trump campaign is now. Is it dire? Is it premature for people to be upset? Is it a problem that he's seeing AI images that don't exist? Have at it. Vin, why don't you go first?
Thanks a lot. I don't know that I'm going to add anything unique to this. You and I, Mark, exchanged emails right after the assassination attempt. And I said to you, and I think you more or less agreed, there used to be all sorts of variables in this race. Now there's only one variable, and that is how is Donald Trump going to perform as a candidate? Obviously, that was an overstatement. We had the incumbent president of the United States withdraw. That's a big variable. But I'm going to say I still think going forward, given the fundamentals within the electorate, the main variable is how Trump performs. And the bad news, and I'd love for Sean to make me feel better about it, is he hasn't performed well literally since the last speech he gave at the convention, the last half of the last speech at the convention. So, unless he can straighten out and discipline himself, and I don't know how that works. Sean's been around him a lot.
I was going to say
how that works.
Well, Congressman, if there's one thing I can say to you, I was there for 2016. I think hopefully he gets into disciplined mode and focus mode. I think post DNC, but that's I've seen it happen, and that's what I think a lot of us are banking on.
Okay.
Governor, what do you think?
One last question.
Ben, and then Governor.
Sean, this is a serious question, meant to be a snide remark. Does he really believe this stuff personally, or does he just think this is how he motivates his voters?
I think it depends on the issue, and that's honest. I've seen him committed to certain things that we were arguing for or against in the past, and I think sometimes someone shows him something and he says, "Get that out before it's processed." I can't say on any particular issue which one is which unless you're there.
Okay, thanks.
Governor, what do you think? Is the Trump campaign in crisis or just waiting for Trump to focus?
Well, I think one of the things he's fighting against is a new trend in politics that's been around for about 8 years, and that is avoiding the media, which Kamala Harris is doing. You're rewarded for it. And trying to be transparent, like J.D. Vance has been during this past weekend, during all the talk shows, you're punished for it. No matter how good a job you do, you're punished for it because they only bring up the issues that bring clicks, while J.D. Vance was trying to change the subject. And I saw this in one of my campaigns in 2016 in governor's reelection. Roy Cooper, my opponent, avoided all cameras and questions the entire campaign. And because he had the money and resources to do it, I tried to be as transparent as possible, like J.D. Vance is trying to do. And all it did was cause more pain for the headlines that the media wanted to pull out of an hour interview. And I think it's a very smart strategy on Vice President Harris to avoid the media because she's now even more in demand. The media doesn't want to irritate her campaign because they want that exclusive interview. and they want her advertising, by the way, down the road from a business case. And I think it's a smart move. I think it's a bad move for democracy. And I think there ought to be more anger from the media about this than there is. And there isn't.
Alex,
and therefore, I'd keep doing it if I was Kamala Harris. Sadly.
Alex, what do you think? Yeah.
Well,
Thank you, Governor. Alex.
I think sometimes those of us who have been in the business forget how different Trump is. Here's a guy who came off the sidelines, never been in politics, and did the impossible, overthrew two long-established political parties against an avalanche of mainstream media opposition without spending a nickel on television. That's insane. Nobody does that. And how did he do it? Theater, showmanship. And when he sees these crowds, that's a threat to the only thing he knows and the only thing that's worked. This is the very essence of who he is. So I think he sees that this is a really desperate situation for him. If he loses his only competitive advantage, showmanship, he's got no campaign.
I would, it's like a rock band playing their greatest hits over 10 years. There are only so many times the audience will come back. And therefore, the audience now is going toward the new voice that's in demand by being quiet.
And it makes
that's kind of my theory. And I thought J.D. Vance was trying to make up for it this weekend. I thought doing a good job, but he couldn't get the media off the clickbait agenda. No matter how well he did, actually, I thought he's actually did pretty good, but it didn't make any difference. Alex, I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, I think there's a lot of truth in that. I think it makes you wonder if 2020 was his moment and if the window has passed him by, if the world has changed. And I think that's possible. Harris may be breaking this open a little bit. Now, that would be against all experience and evidence. Everything in the world has happened in this campaign and campaign since 2016, and Trump moves this much, nothing. But it feels like something may be cracking a little bit that's different here now.
And I just,
Alex, thank you. Go ahead, Sean,
quick.
and then we're going to close with Wickham.
I would just say real quick, I think some great points by Governor McCurry. J.D. Vance crushed it this weekend. He did a fantastic job, and I don't think that should be understated as far as his attempt to really reframe the narrative. The idea that democracy is something that's a talking point of theirs and they've got a candidate that won't talk to the press is kind of a fascinating narrative right there. But to Alex's point, I think he's spot on about 90% of this. The one tweak, I mean, Alex is absolutely right. This is a guy who came up not through the political system. He bested some of the best political minds and strategist in his journey so far. I do think his end of the day instinct is always right, though. That's the thing about Trump, is he will read this situation, and it may take longer than we want to. And I know we look at the back and forth every day, but trust me, I think you got a debate coming up that we all on September 10th. You've got a lot of X issues going on with Israel and Iran, and there's an opportunity. The question is, does he seize it? And I think if past is any indication, he will seize an opportunity in the next few weeks that really has the opportunity to change this. And if nothing else, we've seen in the last several weeks that there's a lot of ups and downs that are potentially headed our way.
Wickham, my instinct is you're an undecided voter who lives in Scranton, but go ahead and tell us.
Nice try. I'm a very much decided voter who lives in Washtenaw County, Michigan, in between the cities of Ann Arbor and Saline.
All right, that's still a battleground state. Who are you for?
I voted for President Trump for candidate Trump in 2016 twice. The first time in the general election, and the second time as one of Michigan's 16 electors in the Electoral College, where, by the way, I ran into my first left-wing mob, which was chanting around the State House and trying to keep us from getting in. I also voted for him in 2020 because I liked what he had done. I think the statistic that was most relevant to me was the fact that the real wages for the lowest fifth workers in the United States were increasing for the first time in 30 or 35 years. And I think it had a lot to do with control of the border and the ability for lower end wage people to find jobs that were paying them more money. I do have a question that is.
You're for President Trump again this election, I assume.
Yes, largely because of the nomination of Vance and the idea of a working party kind of presidency, which appealed to me first in 2016 and then again.
Were you open to voting for Biden before the Vance election?
No, I don't think so. No.
Okay. All right. Go ahead. Ask your question, and then Tim will answer it and try to win you over.
Okay, very good. My question is, I've been wondering about the strategy that George Bush followed in 2000 when he essentially ran almost like a British campaign where you have a shadow cabinet. And he was starting to appoint people like, for example, Colin Powell, and then bring him into the campaign. I attended a rally where Bush and Colin Powell were both there. And I wondered if and this would be for Sean as much as anybody else, whether or not Trump could bring himself to do something like that. And if he did, whether it would be the kind of thing that might be intriguing to people, because after all, the president is one guy and you've got a whole administration that you're dealing with.
Yeah, I just don't. He tends to have a aversion to wanting to talk about life after the campaign. We saw that in 2016. Number one, but number two is I just don't know what naming somebody brings to you. So I get your point. I think it was different back then. I just don't know, considering how well known both of the candidates are, that somebody can. Someone would make that a difference, saying, "Wow, he's going to appoint so and so to be HHS secretary or." White House counsel or whatever. I don't see that having a discernible impact on the election.
I also think a lot of those names that would be familiar to people that are more establishment names might not be willing to sign on for this, just based on how some of the other cabinet members are talking about their previous experience with him, would be my guess.
Wickham, in Michigan and nationally, is this a 50-50 race, or do you see a favorite at this point?
Well, at this point, and with the people that I know, the Trump people are still the Trump people, and they're very still strongly in favor of him. But I mean, I can see what you guys are talking about, and it doesn't feel to me like he's in very good shape right now.
If he called you and asked you for advice, if President Trump called you and asked you for advice, what would you tell him he needs to do?
What Sean is saying, which is to concentrate on the real deficiencies in the opposition. Okay,
great. Thank you, Wickham. Come back often. How'd you find out about two-way in the morning meeting?
Mark, I've been following you since the circus in 2016. And then I picked it up on Twitter, and I've been on every one of these for the last couple of weeks.
Awesome. Thank you for joining. Come back regularly. All right, guys, any closing words you want to impart? We've gone way over. The affiliates are angry. Anything?
I can't wait for the Musk interview.
Yeah, I'm building my evening around it. We'll be back tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern time for another edition of Morning Meeting. Noah, can we announce tonight's event? Is that set or not yet?
Yes, we can.
Go ahead. You announce it.
4:30 p.m. two-way.
4:30 p.m. Unnamed Mark Halpern two-way. We'll send around the links in a little bit, but mark your calendars 4:30 and again 9 a.m. Same bad time, same bad channel for the morning meeting. Tim, good luck at the job interview. We hope you get it. Remember, if they ask you your biggest weakness, say you love too much and you work too hard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you again tomorrow, and I'll see you at 4:30.